Hey everybody, this is Jeff, and today we are going to try to get this 66 Bonneville wagon running for the first time since I've owned it. Before we do that, we need to move this 65 Grand Prix. Now, it's been a few months since I moved this thing. I remember it running and driving well, but what I also remember is that it has no brakes and no fuel system. So we'll see how much of a fight it puts up today. We're kind of at a race against the clock here because we're trying to do all this before our tires go completely flat. I heard some buzzing. Maybe that's just the insects. Yeah, so there's our fuel system. Grab this can here, see if that fits. Yeah, definitely, maybe. Ooh, do we have enough reach? Oh, just barely. Okay. Let's fill our bowl up. See if this thing will talk. That's way too much gas. I'll try to get them in all the front and the back bowl here. This has a Carter carburetor on it, factory. All right. Let's see what kind of damage we can do. Oh, what a peach. Oh my, can you believe that? We're charging. Thing sounds pretty good. All right. We got our e-brake engaged already. Throw this thing into gear and see what it does. We just got to move it on the other side of that Catalina. There's reverse. There it goes. Oh, of course. This neutral safety switch works. Come on, baby. We got to try really hard to not hit the trailer right behind us. Is. Oh, this thing has flat tires, and I don't know if the power steering is working. Mostly flat tires. They pretty much all went flat before I could even turn the camera on. All right. That e-brake isn't doing anything in reverse. That's good. Maybe if it doesn't do anything going forward, then at least it's only hurting my stuff. We'll just coaster on in here. Ooh, barely made it. Park. Okay, we did it. Let's go work on that wagon. So here we have a 66 Pontiac Bonneville wagon. Now, this thing was fairly well optioned when it was new. As you can see, it has the 8-lug wheels on it, which are, if you aren't familiar with them, this is basically one big hub or brake drum, and then it has kind of like trailer house style rims that bolt to the outside of the aluminum hub. Another really special thing about it, it was a 421 car. Now, I believe it has a 69 400 in it now, but we can't win them all, can we? As you can see, this thing is just full of stuff. This is exactly how we got it, and let me tell you, that winch on the trailer really didn't enjoy pulling it up here. But it also is an AC car, tilt column, power windows, and power locks, which was quite the rarity for the day. But unfortunately, this car is really tough. It was in West Virginia for a long time before it came back to Nebraska, and it's pretty much rusting from the top down, a lot like that 65 Grand Prix. It came from the same place. The thing has these really neat aftermarket spotlights on it. They're Unity brand. I've seen a lot of Guide brand ones, but I don't know if I ever recall seeing any Unities. If you know how popular those things are, please let me know. Yeah, this side is the same way, chock full of Pontiac stuff. Let me tell you, this thing was a lot of fun to get on the trailer with a locked up wheel, a tire that wouldn't take air, and power windows that would not roll down. So once I got it straight, I just pretty much had to pray that it would go between the fenders on the trailer. And this thing was a rodeo to get up there. Between the weight and the locked up wheels, that was a Bearcat. So under the hood, the first thing we see is factory air conditioning, power steering, and power brakes. The previous owner claimed that this motor was rebuilt while he had it, and I tend to believe him. The thing's got paint on it still, and he said the same thing about that 65 Grand Prix, and that thing runs like a top. But this car hasn't ran in about 20 years. Hopefully it doesn't give us too much hassle, and hopefully it's not locked up, but we're about to find out. Now before we start tearing things apart, let's just check out some vitals and see what we're up against. This car used to live in Wyoming, so here's to hoping it's got real actual antifreeze in it. I can't see anything other than a dirty radiator. Well, how about our oil, huh? Oil is about a half a quart down, but doesn't look too bad. It's not leaking off the dipstick, so we can about assume that there's a little bit of viscosity left. Well, that's just an open hole. That's good. Got our cap on that side. We have under the air filter. Flipped lid, of course, maximum performance. Looks pretty clean. Doesn't really look like anything got the chance to get in there. Everything's still hooked up, well, loosely, I should say. So of course we have another red cable as our ground. That's nice, we'll have to remember that. Black cable going down to our starter, and loosely hooked together still. That looks like the main wire for the cab. We'll have to keep that in mind. I don't have keys for this one either, so we'll just do the same thing we did on the last video and hot wire the thing. So before I get carried away, I'm going to take the number 1 spark plug wire and mark it so that I don't lose track of my firing order. Now we'll start pulling plugs out. See what we can find. Hopefully nothing too exciting. These older Pontiacs, they've got 13/16 spark plugs. Those are the ones that have the sealing washer on them. Number 1 came out without much of a fight. That looks pretty good. Well, that doesn't look like it's ran very long. They're Delco plugs, that's a great sign, so I'm gonna assume this thing could be pretty healthy. A little bit of what I can tell about the motor. Looks like a pretty stock 1969 Pontiac 400 out of a B body, 290 horse automatic with, what are these, number 62 heads. So that's a higher compression large valve head, so that's a pretty good head that's on there. So number 3 looks about the same way. As you can see, the electrode looks really good. Not a lot of slobber on there. Golly, there is vines growing up everywhere. This thing must have sat for some time. These plugs aren't in there very tight. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but so far, they all look really good. Yeah. Number 5 looks about the same as the rest of them. That's good. We like uniformity. How about 7? Hopefully the same. I'm only a little bit concerned about this thing catching on fire if we get it running. That hood insulation might have to come down, do a little bit of damage control. Yeah, once again, looks good. We'll be able to use those. Now, getting the plugs out on the passenger side of these things isn't nearly as much fun. As you can see, we've got this plenum here that takes up a lot of space in our engine compartment. And not only that, we have a giant AC compressor straddling the number 2 plug, and it's just about impossible to get a spark plug socket in there. So I'm going to save you guys the hassle of watching me take this compressor off while I do that. Now, removing these old compressors kind of looks more daunting than it really is, but all we have is 2 bolts here at the front of the head and 2 bolts at the front and the back of this pedestal mount. So now that we have this compressor off, you can clearly see the number 2 spark plug lying beneath there. That'll be a lot easier to get at. So here you can see spark plugs 2, 4, 6, and 8. And the electrodes on those look really good. We even see a tinge of brown on there. That's a great sign. So chances are this engine was running really good when it was last running. Hopefully history will repeat itself today. Next thing I want to do is fill the cylinders with this Marvel Mister Oil. So this is going to give us some initial lubrication since this thing hasn't been started for a long time. What I like to try to do is get this hose as far in the cylinder as I can so that I get the entire top of the piston covered in this stuff so that it has a chance to make contact with the piston rings and hopefully maybe break them away from the cylinder wall if they're a little bit stuck. So we're going to put, give or take, 5 or 6 pumps in each of these cylinders so that we get the tops of the pistons good and saturated. This stuff makes a mess when you're doing this though, but I'd like to think to myself it's worth it. Depending on how high up the piston is in the cylinder, you might not be able to get in that many pumps, but just do what you can. All right, let's go to the other side now. If I were in my shop, I would have taken the time to probably vacuum out everything around the spark plug holes in the top of the engine, but we don't have that luxury at the moment. Also would have been nice to maybe clear some dirt away from these spark plug holes, but we'll just try to be as careful as we can. Now there's not much for space between the front of the engine and the radiator. With this double pulley, water pump pulley, and this clutch fan. So we're gonna try to do it the easy way and try to turn this motor over by using the alternator and the belts. Oh, it went backwards. We got forward, we got backward. It's free. Oh man, can you believe that? We'll just walk it around a little bit if we can. Try to get some revolutions out of it. At least a revolution would be nice. You gotta put some pressure on the belt with your hand. Otherwise it'll just spin. But it's free. Now these should be pretty easy to spin over due to the fact that we don't have any compression right now because all of our spark plugs are out. But it's going pretty good, all in all. A lot better than what I expected. A lot better than that 63 Catalina. I think this thing is gonna go. I do believe. Yeah, we'll throw a battery in it and see what our spark situation looks like. I think this is gonna be okay. One thing we have to try to not forget about is that loose AC compressor belt. Of course, it's at the very back of the pulley. So in order to get it off, we'd have to take the rest of the pulleys, or the belts off, that is. I don't want to do that badly, so we're just gonna try to tuck it in down there. Better yet, we'll just cut it. We're not gonna need that. All right, I've got one end of my switch on the small terminal on the starter. Let's hook battery up. No sparks, that's good. All right, where's the other end of this little doggy? Positive. Let's try it. Oh man, look at that. Get out of the way here. Let it barf all this oil out. Don't hear any goofy mechanical noise, that's good. All right, let's look for some spark. All things considered, this really doesn't look bad. I mean, this doesn't look like it had that much runtime on it. We've got a pretty new looking rotor, so maybe this thing was worked on shortly before it was parked. I just can't believe that. Well, we're gonna get the rotor taken off and we're gonna slap those points around and see if that works for us. So we've got the rotor off now, and these points don't look all that whippy. The little pads on them aren't really aligned, so I wonder what's going on. At any rate, we're still gonna make an attempt to get them to work. They don't have to make a lot of contact, just enough. If I can get my little file in there. These are the niftiest little things. Oh, come on. There we are. We're just gonna go back and forth a little bit. You see all that white on the end of the file? That's corrosion from the points. We'll get those cleaned up. That should be more than enough. All right, let's hook up our hot wire to the positive side. That should be a good enough bite, right? And see what we can see in there. See if we can get them all the way open. They're not opening very far. Let's bump it again. No, we don't have a lot of gap between them. Can we see any spark if we open them? Nothing, not a thing. I don't even know if we've got voltage up to them. It acts like, oh, there we go. There's a little bit of spark. So we've got voltage to them. But Are they doing points things? Yeah, maybe. That might have been enough. Let's see it now. Oh yeah, just barely. Now we've got a lot gooder spark. Okay. You don't want to keep that on very long, because if you keep power going to their points, you could potentially burn them up if the motor's not turning. Well, how's about we put a rotor back on, we put our ignition system back together. My cap and my rotor back on. Let's put our wire to our points again. See if we can see any spark. It's faint, but it's there. Okay. Let's put the rest of them together. Now that we have all the plugs and wires back on, let's talk about firing order on these things. So GM V8s, as far as I know, are all, at least this vintage, I don't know about LS's, but these are 18436572. So here's our number 1 spark plug wire. So number 1 on these Pontiac V8s is the first one on the driver's side. So we've got 1, 3, 5, and 7. The odds are on this side, the evens are on the passenger side. And same as this side, the passenger side goes 2, 4, 6, and 8. So here is our number 1 wire. Let's follow that up to our distributor. So number 1 won't always be in this position, which is why I take the time to mark it. But in our case, we have 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, and 2. Some of these feel a little loose, but I think they're going to be good enough for this exercise. Well, let's get some gas and get ready to start this thing. So, as a precaution, we unhooked the line, the fuel line that is, going to the carburetor, just in case that fuel pump decides to work and pump bad gas. We really don't want that going into the carb, so it's disconnected. I'm gonna leave the rest of the fuel lines hooked up to see if maybe the fuel pump will work, and if it does, I'll hook a jerry can up to it and we'll pull gas out of a jerry can. But for right now, all we're going to try to do is fill the vents up on the carb and see if we can get it to run off of that. Looks like we have a few vacuum leaks to address, so let's look at that really quick. So it's a good idea to look at your vacuum hoses before you start something. If there is a massive vacuum leak, then the engine's not going to run well, if at all. And in our case, that's what we would have had here if we didn't do something about it. The full vacuum line that goes to the PCV valve is broken, and if we had a leak there, then that's a lot of vacuum that we're losing. So we have that plugged up with the 2 3/8 bolts that we took out of our AC compressor. So let's dump some fuel in this thing and see if it works. What we're doing here is just filling up the vents, trying to at least. So what filling the vents does is fills the bowls below them, and then that is going to act like we have fuel pressure in a way. Not really pressure, but we will have fuel sitting in the carburetor. So if it does run and have decent vacuum, then it should pull fuel out of the carb. Now we're gonna hook up our hot wire. Give it a shot. Oh, it's thinking about it. That's even decently quiet. That's not bad. Try to fill up these bowls a little more nicely. You're gonna see a lot of smoke from this because of all that mixture oil that spilled out, along with the engine trying to burn it. Hook up our hot wire with my hand that's not covered in gas. that's just that marble burning off is all. Hopefully that's not on fire. Not a lot of valve train noise. Maybe not a lot of accelerator pump either, but hey, look at that. We did it. Let's try that again. I don't want to go too nuts because we don't have any water in this thing, but gosh, that sounded pretty good. Maybe I can semi-controlledly fill up these bowls. Not really. We're gonna get so much gas in this thing that we hydro lock it. Well, hey, we'll consider that a win. Not bad at all for considering how long it allegedly sat. Cool. Yeah, we're gonna tell ourselves that that's just oil burning out of the cylinders. The car's probably not actually on fire. Sniff test? Oh yeah, that's marble. No worries. Well, I think we're gonna call that a day, folks. As much as I'd love to do more to the car, it's in pretty rough shape, and I am not so sure if this is restorable. I mean, I know you can consider anything restorable with enough money, but this is kind of a bad injury here. But if you love this thing more than I do, let me know. I'm gonna consider it a great donor. The motor acts like it could potentially run good. Transmission, hard telling, but those 8-lug wheels on it are worth a few bucks, and not to mention the tilt and the power options. So we'll see if I go any further with it. Probably not. We've got plenty of other stuff to work on, like that old Bonneville. Thanks for watching, everybody.